friends, it's nice to be with you again. I've had a number of people that have asked me about Martin Armstrong's kind of prediction of a directional change on the 7th and 8th of May and what that was about and what supposedly happened. So I thought I'd spend a little bit of time and tell you, what seems to be in play here. Martin Armstrong's computer program, the economic confidence model, is exactly what it says. It is a model. It models the large scale confidence of whatever group that he's looking at, the United States, Europe, the world, whatever. And it's their confidence in the economic system. So it's a psychological, essentially, large psychological kind of metric. And it's unique to him, and he's put it together over 40 years ago, because I've heard him talk about it. I go to his conferences every year down in Florida. And I've heard him talk about that for 40 years, it's been predicting that between 2025 and 2027, there will be a global civil war. And so it's been around a good bit. He has this other program, Socrates, which is based upon 70 different modules that duplicate the cyclical nature of 70 different aspects of reality. Geopolitics, politics, climate, economy, finance, a whole bunch of things. And the thing about the Socrates is that it has never been wrong. And it will give you almost to the day when the market is going to change, or a particular stock or whatever is going to move, or it's just pretty amazing. And there's a great deal of correlation between the economic confidence model and Socrates. But the economic confidence model, they're not linked. They're not tied together in any kind of way. And the economic confidence model looks like this. This is the coffee cup that you get when you go down there. This is one of the things that you get to take home. And so it's like, so you're looking at this mountain range, right, of peaks that go from certain kind of days, and they're always denominated. I don't know if you can see that clearly, but they're always denominated in like 2022.35. And when you figure out what 0.35 is of a year, you find out what the exact date is. And so that top peak right there in the middle is May the 7th and 8th. And you can see that the confidence goes up and down and up and then down. And then, and it goes, and it really hits bottom down here, right here. And when it hits the bottom down there, that is 2028, sometime in 2028. And so when you talk about a directional change, you're talking about this, hitting the peak and then turning the other way. The confidence switches from being positive to going negative, right? That's what it is. The question is, what is it that defines what is it that is at that peak? Well, one of the other earlier major peaks was COVID. And if I showed you an earlier coffee cup, I would show you where it hit on the 21st and the 20th and 21st of January of 2020. It's boom, and that's when COVID showed up. And there was a switch, a directional change. But sometimes it's not obvious what it was or what the metric was that the directional change is about. What it is that kind of precipitated or encouraged or supported the shift in psychology to where people are starting to lose confidence in the system, if you will. And you can certainly tag COVID as being an issue that did that. But, on the 8th of May, Vladimir Putin got himself elected again. Was that it? Probably not, but maybe, I don't know. It's hard to tell. And that's the point here that I want to make tonight, is that it is certain only in retrospect, right? It is clear only in hindsight that sometimes what the peak or the bottom is that turns it positive, what it might be. Now, so many people have looked all around on the 8th of May and said, I never saw anything. What was this about? And so I get Marty Armstrong's blog and some other kind of things from him. And so I thought I'd just kind of read back to you what I thought was the number of things that he said about it. The thing that seemed to make the most sense to me. And that was that this may well have been the peak of confidence that the world has in their governments, and that there has been this kind of fundamental structural shift that where the confidence that folks have goes from being public to private. In large terms, over a large period of time, Marty tracks this and says that there are these public cycles and then there's private cycles. And by public, he means the confidence is basically within the space, within the realm of governments, and people feel confident in government, and so they put money into treasury bills and bonds and whatever, those kinds of things. And then they turn, and by the way, these are irregular kind of cycles. It goes up and down and up and down and up and down. Public, private, public, private, public, private. When it hits the peak and turns, then they lose confidence in the government and they switch over to stocks and bonds and the private sector, real estate, things like that. So he was, in the days after May the 8th, he was talking about the fact that this could have been the time when there was this shift and it moves from one kind of general orientation to another one, which means in this case that they had lost confidence in the governments and the ability of governments to equitably, effectively provide for the well-being of the populace, let's say. And as I've thought about that in the last couple of weeks, it's seemed to be, but that makes a lot of sense to me. There's clearly, this is all working its way toward a new low, if you will. And however you define that low, Marty Armstrong defines that low as World War III being this year and next year starting a global civil war. And that certainly would qualify as a kind of a new low before that would then turn around and head north again. If you are working with that kind of model in your mind and you look around, you can say it's certainly the wind's coming out of this one, and it's just headed toward the toilet. And the indications are all over the place. I mean, just this afternoon, Donald Trump got himself convicted of, and if you followed this at all, it was a giant political vendetta against the man. I mean, they held it in the district in New York where 87% of the people who voted for Joe Biden, and only 12% voted for Trump. And the deck was really stacked against him. And, I don't want to go into the details of the whole thing, but there's never been a president in our history that that the status quo, the deep state, if you will, the powers that be have gone after him. And as a matter of fact, this is the first time in the history of the country that any president has been convicted of a crime for good reasons, because what they've effectively done is they have weaponized the legal system, and they're doing it all over the place, and which is part of the reason why people are losing confidence in the system. And there are many kind of ways in which things that are happening that contribute to that general kind of feeling, or that come to that conclusion. There are multiple indications that say that the United States and NATO are marching straight toward World War III, that they are doing their best to start a war with either Iran but certainly Russia and ultimately China. And you've got military leaders saying, "Yeah, sure, we can fight a two-front war with Russia and China." I mean, it's absurd. It's crazy stuff. The Russians has effectively depleted all of our ammunition inventory, just about, and they've just run us out of bullets. And so, even if you just think about this as a conventional war, they've sucked all of the resources out of Europe and everything else. And so, there's a lot of kind of blustering that's going on here, I think. But nevertheless, they seem to be wanting to start that. You may have noticed that in the last week, the Ukrainians shot a missile and took out one of the major early warning radar systems of Russia in Russia, which that leaves a whole sector that they can't cover for incoming strategic missiles from the United States or some other place. And that is really dangerous because and we've been picking at them just like that in a number of kind of places. And so they're really trying to do that. I mean, they're trying to start a war with China around Taiwan, and we've got a big joint naval exercise going over there that just surrounds all of Taiwan, and all you're doing is you're just poking the Chinese. I mean, you keep doing that, and there is, on one level, it's irrational because it's just stupid. Putin has made it very clear that he's willing to negotiate an end to this thing in Ukraine if he can talk to the right people about it. But the United States and Britain refuse to allow Zelensky to talk in any kind of a reasonable way to negotiate. And so it's easy to kind of get yourself into a situation where you look at these kinds of things and you say, this thing is really headed down, and it's headed down fast, and it's going to get worse before it gets better. There are a whole variety of other kind of things. The growing apprehension that Chat GPT and AI systems are generating because it's moving so fast that it's very hard for almost anybody to fully understand what the implications of these are. And people are waving all kinds of flags about the potential negative implications of the AI kind of revolution. And at the same time, some of us are trying to capitalize on it to build a capability to use the AI for developing a new world, for helping us all to work our way through and design a new world. And that's very actively going on, by the way. And I'm contributing a good part of my library and so on to being trained in a program that is being developed around that. And so there are some really bright, there's some rays of light that are coming through here, and there's some positive things, but you will not hear about them or read about them in the mainstream media because they are doing nothing if it's accentuating everything that's negative and how horrible it is and where it's all coming unglued. And all I'm saying is that there may have been kind of a spark were some really good people who were trying to save the old system and were trying to deal with it in any of a variety of ways to try to save it. And I think that that's just about disappeared. I think that there are clearly a whole lot of folks who are working around the edges, and whether it's in the inner cities and whether poor people or whatever it turns out to be, and God bless them all, because that all needs to be done. But in terms of kind of saving the system, it's now become clear that the legal system, the economic system, the financial system, the education system, you can just kind of walk your way around. All of them are effectively bankrupt. They are ineffective, and they're structurally systemic flawed. And there's no way you're going to get the thing. You're never going to get that fixed. The only solution is that whole system fails and implodes, and what arises is a new world. And so probably, by Martin Armstrong's terms, a number of countries, including the United States, have kind of decomposed, and then the thing starts to head up again. So that's what it seemed kind of to make sense to me, and it kind of confirms what I'm seeing around. And what it says is quite clearly that absent some extraordinary anomalous exogenous event, and I kind of hesitate there because that's always a possibility. I mean, I'm the guy who wrote the book about wild cards. I mean, big surprise events, right? And how you might think and deal with them. And so I've spent a good bit of my life thinking about these kinds of things. So you always got to keep those in mind. I don't know if it's a growing number as well as much of it is a solidifying of growing indications that there are a variety of kind of scenarios that all include the possibility of some wild thing happening. We've got our speaker transition talk since August, or maybe it's September. I can't remember now. So it's August, I guess, is a woman who spent her whole life talking, getting carried up to ET ships and learning how to pilot and on and on. And I mean, she's 60 now, and this all started when she was 3, but she remembers when she, from 14 on, all of the details. She's almost unique, I think, in the world in terms of having that amount of history and being carried up 2 or 3 times a week, spending, kind of warped time spaces. I mean, they'd take her up and it'd be 3 days up there, and she'd come back and it'd be 2 hours later here. And so she got all of her early education, and then, ended up becoming a professional pilot and driving these ships all over the universe and certainly around the galaxy and so on. So she's a wealth of information, and you can believe it or not, but it's an extraordinary kind of rather coherent kind of picture of an alternative space. And what is the message that these guys have? It's very clear. They say every 12,000 years, the sun has a big coronal mass ejection, and and it is coming, and it's going to happen within the next 2 years, and you guys got to get ready. And we're going to come by and we'll pick up all of the people who are ready to go because who are ready, because we'll take them to another planet, and and then you can kind of winter over there until the Earth gets habitable again, and then we'll bring you back. I know. Yeah. I mean, this is, at one level, it's kind of crazy science fiction movie things, but I don't know. We're living in a crazy science fiction movie kind of world right now. And so you just really don't know what these alternative aberrational things might be. One possibility, of course, is that these waves of energy that are coming out of the center of the galaxy, which have been well documented now, would, lead to the evolution, the increased consciousness of, a critical mass of people, that is to say humans, such that we could influence this future, and that the sun may not do, but it otherwise would have. I don't know. But what I know is that there's a variety of different kind of alternative kind of scenarios, and it's overstated to say it's going to be interesting, but it is. And we also need to get ready. That's a very important part of all of this, which we've talked about many times before. So that'll give you a little bit of an idea of what kind of the implications of this directional change was. And you may look back and say, oh, it was something else. It was big, and it just started there. That was the peak or the major shift. But it looks like, it seems to me, that the confidence in the global kind of government system is going away. So thank you very much.